saying, yes, we're all on the bandwagon, we're going to pass this, but sorry, there's no money for it. We know it's not going to happen unless there's money for it.
No, the money is being restored in the budget right now during the conference committee negotiations. What this bill is trying to do is twofold. One is to restore the criteria under which women are eligible for the program, and the governor had changed that to age 50 before he actually ended enrollment. So we would restore that back to age 40. And then the second thing the bill does is, because it's been so very difficult for the legislature, and I've personally been trying for a couple of years now to get information about this program, about the funding, about why the funding is dwindling, whether or not the current funding under the tobacco tax is sufficient to sustain the program going forward, what the costs are per individual in the program, and where the money is actually going, and which was the reason for the auditor's report. Because it's been so difficult for the legislature to get that information in order to make reasonable, informed decisions about the sustainability of the program in the future, that's the second thing that this bill does. Is currently, the Department of Public Health is required to provide annual reports to the legislature. No report has ever been given since 1996. So we've been operating without the information that we need as a legislature. So what this does, the second thing this bill does, is ensure that we get the information we need on a timely basis by February 1st of every single year, and it identifies the information that the legislature is requiring to be included in that report. So, no, I understand the point that you're making, but the funding really legitimately should go through the budget process. This bill seeks to make sure that the program is ongoing and that we as a legislature can ensure its sustainability.
And for that, you got my aye vote. But also, I just want to be realistic here. This is screening. So now we tell the patient, yeah, you have a positive result here. We have no money to do the surgery. And is there any push in that direction to make sure that if somebody does have a positive finding, we're going to provide the funding to get the treatment done?
Well, I think what you're addressing is the overall global problem that we're having with the state budget right now, and whether or not we can continue to afford the Medi-Cal services. And the professionals in the field right now can tell you what they're doing currently with respect to that exact situation. But you're addressing really the overall fundamental problem that we have in the state budget and providing the services
briefly on
we
that
need to
point.
provide.
Bob Ackman again with the Radiological Society. Once the woman is positive on a mammogram, they do become Medi-Cal eligible for the diagnostic services and the surgery.
If they're qualified for Medi-Cal.
I think they automatically become qualified.
Diagnosis.
Yeah, via the diagnosis. So, I mean, it's still a cost, but it does obviate the funding shortfall in the program.
Thank you.
The other aspect of this is a very cost-effective program, because by screening you can catch the cancer at an earlier stage. It can cost up to 10 times less treating it at an earlier phase than at a later phase.
Thank you. Senator Leno.
I just wanted to comment on Senator Onested's concern. We have addressed this in Budget Conference Committee, and when there is a policy bill moving through either house on an issue that is in conference, we always defer the policy to the bill. While we may deal with the funding in the conference committee, but we don't like to interfere and try not to do the policy work in the conference committee.
Thank you.
Okay. How soon are they coming? Has been moved. A very brief, and we are looking for authors. We need assembly authors. Otherwise, I'll close down the committee.
Yay.
Don't encourage her. I mean, it is.
You got one.
A one-sentence close, please.
I asked your aye vote.
Thank you very much. Call for the vote, please.
Senator Ahlquist?
Aye.
Ahlquist, aye. Strickland? Strickland, aye. Onnested? Onnested, aye. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Cox? Leno? Leno, aye. Negretti-McLeod? Negretti-McLeod, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Romero?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That bill has 7 votes, enough to get out. We will keep it on call. Members, next we will, can we have it quiet, please? Next we will have Assemblymember Blumenfield, and then Assembly Members Della Torre and Hernandez. We will be taking up item 12, Assemblymember Blumenfield's AB 1759. His AB 1858 will be at the very end for vote only. Welcome. No, just at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members, for the opportunity to be here. This bill, AB 1759, is designed to protect business and their employees from unpredictable rate hikes. News reports indicate insurance companies are scrambling to raise revenue before the upcoming implementation of the federal health insurance reforms. Coupled with what we saw earlier this year, where California's largest for-profit insurer sought a nearly 40% rate hike in the individual market, suggests very volatile rate growth. This bill, AB 1759, seeks to create pricing stability for public and private sector employers in the large group market by removing a loophole in state law to prohibit mid-year, mid-contract rate increases when there are changes in enrollment. The bill is intended to apply only to the large group market, and I would like to accept as author amendments the clarifying changes cited in the analysis to clarify this, as well as all of the amendments, the technical amendments to delete lines 8, 9 on page 3 of the bill, accepted every amendment that's been put forward by the committee. AB 1759 would prevent plans and insurers from being able to make premium changes during the term of a contract that are not based on changes in applicable co-payments, co-insurance, or deductibles as required by law, or changes in coverage not mutually agreed upon. The bill is prompted by employer concerns in our current economic recession that under contract terms rarely exercised before, they would face rate hikes if they lost 10% of their workforce. Not just private companies, but cities, school districts, and other cash-strapped agencies. The bill would protect companies and other large group purchasers who have more than 50 people from mid-contract rate hikes that are destabilizing to business owners who have based their budgets on a fixed cost for health premiums for a year. As you're aware, most Californians receive health insurance coverage through their employers with large companies, accounting for 76% of workers covered, or an estimated 18 million individuals. A mid-contract rate change is a significant issue in the current economic environment of layoffs and business downsizing. This affects a lot of businesses in my district and all over the state. For workers, the mid-contract rate increase could have major impacts, leaving them without employer-sponsored coverage. An employee health condition may not be able to purchase individual coverage when this kind of thing happens. As the Kaiser Family Foundation notes, in the absence of employer-offered coverage, both low-income and middle-income workers are at risk of being uninsured, having few coverage options given the high cost and limitations in the non-group market and limited access to public coverage. This bill is supported by not only employee groups, but many business groups. It is a priority of the Valley Industry Commerce Association in my area, representing businesses, a majority of which are small businesses, California Association of Health Underwriters, labor unions, and, as you'll hear, Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on this bill.
Thank you. 2 witnesses in support, 2 minutes each.
Madam Chair, hi, I'm Jim Garrison. I'm the president of Pacific Federal. What we are is an administrator primarily of Taft-Hartley health plans, which are health plans established for labor unions. I have a few remarks, but what I want to do is address an issue. I've had the opportunity to visit with staff of Senate staff this afternoon, and I have a history of working up here with a number of electeds on other legislative issues. And one issue I'm concerned, I just want to bring it forth, in lack of an argument, the opposition side, the best put forth is this is a self-interest bill. I really want to put forth a couple of issues. Not only that was a self-interest, but somehow Pacific Federal would profit by the fact that we administer self-funded plans, self-insured plans. First, it's apparent by the co-sponsors of the bill, letters in support, this has broad business support for this bill. Second, most important for my reputation, I'm very upset about the fact that the best argument you can put forth, it is a self-interest bill. We administer Taft-Hartley trust funds for most of the major labor unions. It is an absolute fact. None of them have any more self-funded plans. None of our clients. Zero. We have no self-funded plans. All of the products we have for our union beneficiaries are purchased no differently than the businesses that come along in joint support of this bill directly from California health plans. We rely upon the commitment that a one-year rate guarantee is a one-year rate guarantee. I also want to put forth the fact my mission here is actually serving 3 of the clients that have engaged me to put forth this legislation. One of them being in the entertainment industry, one of them being in the food and transportation industry, and one in the public entity industry. This is an issue not only for private businesses, but for small public entities that purchase coverage directly from a health plan. What we want, and I also want to make one other statement, Madam Chair. The underlying statute, I'm very familiar with it because I wrote the underlying statute that goes back to 2002. Prior to this statute, there is nothing in statute to protect us from a mid-year rate guarantee. I was asked to give...
You are at the 2-minute... Actually, you're a little over the 2-minute mark, if you'd like to close.
I do want to close, and I want to ask you, look at the facts and the substance and the beneficiaries of this, the small businesses, and the hardship caused on families by a mid-year rate change. I ask your support for the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm Neil Dudovitz. I'm the Executive Director of Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. We're one of California's largest legal aid programs, serving over 70,000 people a year in Los Angeles. And I'm here wearing several hats. I'm here because we also have a very large health advocacy program, and we work very much on issues involving health consumers. And there's no question, as Assemblyman Blumenfeld noted, that midterm changes in the health rates has a dramatic effect on health consumers. It will reduce the number of people with health insurance and cause economic hardship on them. I'm also here because I am a small employer. I have 100+ employees. I have had midterm rate changes applied to me. It wreaks havoc with my budget to plan on a specific rate and then suddenly find it to be doubled or tripled in the middle of the year. As a small nonprofit, I can't afford to do that. We operate, as you obviously understand, on very small margins. Finally, I just want to note I'm a lawyer, and I find it particularly unreasonable and unfair that you would negotiate a contract, a one-year contract, that would allow for one party to change the game in midstream. That's what negotiations are about. And the people with most of the information, the more information for this negotiation are the health plans. So to allow them, as the current law does, to negotiate a rate with you and then several months later say, oh, there's some new information, we're going to change the rate, seems particularly unfair to me. So I really urge the committee to vote aye on this bill.
Thank you. If others could just state their name and that they are in support.
Amanda Levy, California Psychological Association, in support.
Thank you.
Dolores Sanchez, representing the California Federation of Teachers, in strong support.
Thank you. Others in support? Opposition? Two witnesses, 2 minutes each.
Madam Chair and members, Bill Worley with Kaiser Permanente. Our opposition to this bill is centered on 2 issues. First, the testimony was a little bit confusing. The bill is limited to exclude small employers. The only reach of this bill is to prevent negotiated contractual provisions with large employers. These provisions, there's really only one, at least for Kaiser Permanente, and that is that in the event that a large employer has a significant change in its employment makeup of more than 10%, a mass layoff, a merger, or something that is a dramatic change in the number of employees, that's it, not some new information or something that we didn't think about before, but a specific and significant enrollment change, we reserve the right to revisit and re-rate that policy for the simple reason that the risk mix of the employee group that we agreed to take on for the year has now substantially changed. This is not a new thing. And this is something that we have in contracts even with CalPERS. We have the same contract provision with CalPERS. So it is a really concerning thing to us that we would be prevented from having this kind of safeguard. And finally, I'll just conclude by saying we are troubled that the bill does only apply to fully funded state-regulated plans like Kaiser Permanente. It does not, by its own terms, does not apply to self-funded businesses. Number one, because self-funded insurance arrangements. Number one, because those arrangements are exempt under federal law from any state bill. Number two, because by their very terms, those arrangements adjust for demographic changes every day. If you have 100 fewer employees in a self-funded arrangement,
you're at 2 minutes.
Your costs automatically adjust. We would be prevented from making that very same kind of comparable adjustment under the terms of the bill.
Thank you. And
thank
Senator,
you.
Yes, Senator. Before we go to the next witness, Senator Cedillo had a question or comment.
Bill, help me with this. I'm really grappling with this because there's a lot of things going on, right? So we're moving towards reform, and there's a sense articulated, and the press is putting forth that everybody's rushing to position themselves and protect themselves before they get encumbered with obligations, right? So that you can put yourself in a position so that if you have to encumber obligations that you weren't factoring in, that when you do have to factor them in, you've got a cushion. So, I mean, that's public perception. Specifically, could you give me some examples about this fluctuation? Is this like current practice on these types of changes? And what employers are involved in this? The size of employers that are involved. So if you've got 100 employees, to use a small business, I used to run a small business, I had 100 employees, I drop 10 or I hire 10 more, that creates a change. Then you call me to renegotiate? Or are you Howard? Because what this is basically holds an MOU in place for a year. And so I'm just trying to wonder how this impact is going to have an adverse impact on you.
So let me, I heard...
this change will have an adverse impact.
Right. I heard two questions in there. Let me speak to the first one. This is nothing new, has nothing to do with the implementation of health care reform and people trying to jack up their rates because they're worried about guarantee issue or anything else. And you have a menu of bills moving in the committee. Senator Leno has one, and there are others that would get very directly at rates charged in a very comprehensive way. We don't like a lot of those bills either, but you have them to deal with that concern. And this, for us, these are provisions that we've had in place for many, many years, maybe decades. I can't be exact, but it's nothing new. Second, very rarely exercised. The specific example that I was given was a few years ago, and I apologize, I don't have the specific name, but we had a contract with 3 school districts that were joint. They had one health plan contract. Because of the differences in ages among the teachers of the different districts, 2 of the districts decided to go off on their own. And therefore, the one district that was left, that was still part of the contract, was now 1/3 of the size of what it had been. And and the number of the age mix, frankly, of the employees changed. And that is a sad fact of life that age is pretty directly tied to healthcare costs for all of us. So in that instance, when there's a dramatic change, we reserve the right. We don't always act on it, and in fact, it really is very rare. My folks weren't able to give me a single example in the last 3 years. That doesn't mean that there wasn't one, but in that instance, when there is a very significant change, we reserve the right to go back in. The last point I will make, health plans compete ferociously for this kind of business. If these large employers like CalPERS told us, we don't want that in there, it wouldn't be in there because they have a very equal to health plan market power in these kinds of negotiations. It's only in the event of a significant change in our contracts, that's 10% of the enrollment, that we would reserve the right to go back in.
Finally, just on this, because talk to me about the self-funded plans. How many are in the market? What's the circumstance of that?
I don't know the exact number.
I mean, who would that be?
Well, a large Taft-Hartley Trust, to my understanding, frequently will have offer their employees two choices. Very often it's Kaiser and one other. Blue Cross, Blue Shield, could be somebody else. And though certainly not in all cases, in a number of cases, that second choice is a self-funded option. When that happens, and it's, I want to say, about 5 million lives in California. I could be off by even a couple of million, but it's a big chunk of employed people in large businesses of insured people. In those kinds of arrangements, our point is that demographic changes, say 100 employees are no longer, are laid off. That kind of arrangement adjusts for that change in the risk mix, if they were all young, automatically, because all that plan is doing is paying claims based on the experience of the people. Whereas we at Kaiser are stuck being, under the terms of this bill, being unable to make that same parallel adjustment, if that makes sense.
On that last point, according to the California Health Benefits Review Program in 2010, an estimated 19 million Californians were privately insured, and of these, roughly 4 million, or 21%, were in self-funded.
Thank you.
Second witness, thank you.
Madam Chair, members, thank you. Dan Chick with HealthNet. In addition to some of the points that Mr. Worley made, I want to bring up a couple points that I think are kind of missing in this debate. As Bill said, in the large group market, we aggressively market and try to attract and retain this business. For us to do unilateral, unjustified rate changes midterm is completely contrary to our goal of attracting and retaining business. It was said earlier in the testimony that it was a one-sided affair, but in fact, when you think about this, we are a business as well. We contract for a certain amount of lives, and this provision, although we rarely use it, but if we contract for 1,000 lives with a certain risk mix and we get delivered 500 lives, in the same way any business who contracts for a service or a good at a certain rate based upon a quantity, and the contract then comes at a different one, you can't be ensured that you're going to get the underlying rate of the larger amount. The same holds here true. So although we rarely use it, we need to keep these provisions in there. For the instance, if I had 1,000 employees and I was delivered 500 lives, that risk mix could be very different. It could be they laid off a lot of the younger warehouse workers or assembly workers, and we're left with an older risk mix. So these kind of contract provisions are necessary for us to keep within the contracts. Actually, essentially, that's about all the points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Leno?
Just a question. I think we're hearing a common theme from the opposition, but it doesn't jive with what we heard from our second speaker. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't get your name.
Neil.
The second one was the man on the right.
Mr. Dedovitz.
Yes.
You said you've experienced this phenomenon.
Well, I certainly experienced it several years ago, and I guess the way I look at it, it's true. It's a business. You make a business deal, and
But did you lose half of your staff?
I did. I think we expanded our staff. And it changed the mix, and so my rates went up. And I do want to be clear.
So you provided more individuals, and the rates went up.
That's right. That's right. It depends on the mix. As he's talking about, there are other demographics that affect what your rates are, not just numbers, not just numbers of people.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had 2 witnesses now in opposition. If others would like to state their name and that they are opposed.
Jason Gappart with the Association of California Life and Health Insurance Companies in opposition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, Manolo Platine, Blue Shield of California. I'd associate my comments with the representatives from HealthNet and Kaiser. We'd be in the same position. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members, Nick Luizos, California Association of Health Plans in opposition.
Thank you. We've already had a pretty thorough discussion, but are there other comments or questions? All right. I'd like to put this into perspective just a little bit. The goal of the bill is to provide predictability in the group insurance market by limiting the circumstances under which plans or insurers can change premium rates mid-contract. And the perspective part is this is one of 3 bills that we've had on this topic recently. The other 2, which we passed out of committee, one was AB 2042, Assemblyman Fuhr, which limited rate and benefit changes in the individual market to once per year. We passed that out. The other one was AB 2578 by Assembly members Fuhr and Jones, which regulated premiums in both the individual and the group market. And this is the 3rd bill recently that we are considering, which changes the circumstances to when a change in copay, coinsurance, or deductible is required by law, when you can make the changes. So, yeah.
It's not direct rate regulation.
Right, it's not direct rate regulation. I felt the need to say that because although I believe the author's intent is really good, I'm not able to support the bill today, and I will be voting no. Happy to take a motion.
I move the bill.
The bill has been moved by Senator Leno. Call for the vote, please.
Senator Alquist?
No. I'm sorry.
Oh, no close.
I'm sorry. Would you like to close?
Yes.
Succinctly.
Just to close. I mean, when you lease a car.
And if there are comments that members made you would like to address, that would be fine.
And I'll be brief. I understand you guys have been here a long time, and I don't want to belabor the issue. But I liken this when you lease a car for a year. Even if the inputs in making that car go up over the year and the car company realizes it's going to cost them more to make cars, they wait until your lease is up before they charge you a new price. And it's a similar concept here with companies. When companies buy insurance, they make their predictions for the entire year of how they're going to budget. And some are very vulnerable, like neighborhood legal services, and it's important to them that they know that when the contract is signed, that's going to be the price. The bill is fairly simple. Most of the time, I mean, if there is some radical change, it won't happen in the first few months. It's probably near the end of the lease anyway. So we're talking about a few months here to prevent a contract from changing in the middle of the year. There was issues about self-insured. I'd like to point out this bill has no impact on those. Self-insured, 100% rated. It's not their risk goes neither up nor down as a result of this bill. So with that, I would ask for your support. Thank you. And one more thing, which is that these other bills that you mentioned, I mean, I think there were good ideas, and it's related, but those seem to be about rate adjustments. This is really not about rate adjustments. It's about the certainty of having a year-long contract and the predictability for small businesses and their employees. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Senator Cedillo.
First, and this was brought up initially, and I want to be very clear about this. Mr. Jim Garrison is with us, and he's been involved in this over a period of time and known to many in our community here. I think this discussion has been wholly about policy and different perspectives on policy. I don't think the committee, myself, been influenced in any way by anybody making any disparaging remarks about Mr. Garrison. I did not hear any. I would be offended if someone did. I think he has an honorable reputation, and it would be wholly inappropriate for anyone to suggest otherwise in the context of this hearing. So I think that's important that we say that so that we can have a discussion on the policy differences that exist here. Because I think there's Mr. Blumenfeld's made a good point. At some point, you want to know when a deal is a deal, right? Because for everyone who's planning, all of us, we get an envelope and we find out that we have a new rate to pay. And then we have options, right? So, that happened to me. You shop around and you deal with the market. And some of us have, some people have more options than others. And so I think the purpose of Mr. Blumenfeld's bill is to say, look, within an agreement, when is a deal a deal? On the other hand, I have 3 employers in my district who have been impacted this year by legislation, both federal and local, that changes their risk, right? So I have one employer, because of E-Verify, lost about 20% of his workforce, 2,000 people out of his workforce. Now that's going to change the cost. Who went, the age, all these factors, and they have to be considered. I don't think it's unreasonable for them to be considered. I have another employer who lost about a quarter of their workforce because of a regulation. And now, because we want to make sure that we protect the environment, I have another employer who may be wholly restricted from producing their product. And that's going to have an impact because 90% of his workforce produces a product and then 10% produces a green product, and that's going to impact. And so that doesn't seem unreasonable if you're a vendor of health services. And so it just seems to me that there should be some way that maybe this could be crafted in a way that says, look, if you enter into an MOU and you set the terms and they're for a year, that should be honored unless you have a different provision. I mean, you're an attorney, other people who come in who set a separate provision that says there's some other conditions, right? Some intervening act or mistake, fraud, act of God, whatever those circumstances are, given the volatility of the market today. I mean, I think you're trying to address certainty and stability for the workforce and for the employer. At the same time, we have to balance, Madam Chair, certainty and stability for those who are providing the product. I don't know if we're there in this bill at this moment. I support the concept and what you want to do, but maybe, I don't know if we can find more time to find that balance between both sides, because it seems like I don't want to vote against certainty and stability when you go and make the purchase, right? On the other hand, and I used to negotiate these before for large groups of people, 40,000 people, there's 40,000 people, right? I wanted to get my 100 employees in that larger pool to reduce the price. So I want that certainty and stability. On the other hand, given the volatility of both the market and the economic environment, I see reason in the concern from the community. So I don't know, Madam Chair, if it's timely yet, and maybe we could figure out some time to work on this still. Or if there's an amendment that finds the balance, because I don't have the impression that there's been a lot of dialogue, given the testimony here.
The problem with the bill as it is currently written is that it overrides the ability of both the employer and the plan to agree to lower the premiums mid-year if employment declines. So although the bill has some positives, it also has some very negative ramifications as would be in this current environment we are in, which is in an economic decline, maybe slightly going
Would
up.
it prohibit individual agreements or contracts?
The parties can agree, but if there's agreement between the parties, they can lower or raise the price at the contract at any time. There's nothing in this bill that prohibits mutual agreement from lowering or raising. So if the company were to say to if if the health plan were to say to the company, we'd like to lower your rates, I'm sure they would be agreeable.
But that's not the way it's written.
It does not prevent mutually agreed upon changes.
Speak to it.
Our reading of those.
It was on.
Do you have it in front of you?
Reading of the language is it strikes the reference to having this in the contract, so the agreement would have to be outside of the contract, and we're not sure what would trigger that. And at the point a change occurred, why would one party or the other agree to it?
Well, you're saying if the change occurs, if the insurance company says, "Oh, we can lower your premiums," they can certainly agree to that and lower the premium.
But you can't.
It's just the unilateral. It's the unilateral nature of this. It's saying that the insurer cannot just do it on their own, up or down, but by mutual agreement, they certainly can change it. I mean,
it's just by striking the term, striking the ability to have that in the contract. The plan may or may not do that.
Well, if you want me to take an amendment to make that explicit, I would be happy to.
I'm willing. Excuse me, Senator Cedillo.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm willing, if right now, in concept, we can agree on some language that would make it a better bill, I'm willing to do that. But that really means we have to talk about what that would be and that we want to go in that direction.
I believe Mr. Garrison had an idea for that. Go ahead. Or if with the chair's
but just on point, sir. I mean, just on point. And wait, Senator Cedillo, did you want to speak? I think what we will do is we have more bills to hear. And I would like Mr. Blumenfield, Mr. Hansel knows what my expectations are.
Absolutely.
And if Mr. Blumenfield and Mr. Hansel would like to go out in the hall and talk, and some stakeholders for a few minutes. But the author does need to understand we've expressed these concerns. It's been in print, and we do not do things at the last minute. It's just not fair to staff on burnout when we have 30-plus bills and things like this happen at the last second, when we've been very clear on what we believe was weaknesses in the bill language. We will make this one exception, Mr. Blumenfield, for you.
I greatly appreciate that and appreciate your indulgence on that.
And there has to be some consensus. I mean, if 5 or 10 minutes there's no consensus, then we will just do it up. We will just vote.
Right. As you know, I've taken every amendment I've seen so far, and I welcome this opportunity to have an additional moment to discuss the new concerns.
Fine. Thank you very much. We will put this bill on hold for a few minutes. And with that, so you're comfortable with that? We will go on to file item 4, Assemblymember Delatorre, AB 591. I can't do it this second. But I'm going to tell them. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is what I'm going to say?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you, Senator Pavley. Welcome, Assemblymember Delatorre.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
I'm going to tell everybody.
Which, do you want me to start with 591?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to start off
Tell me, do you have any last-minute changes in your bill?
No, I'm accepting the committee's suggested amendments on pages 8 and 9 of the analysis. We've passed out the mock-up that addresses those concerns, so you have that in front of you. Assembly Bill 591 will protect consumers from skyrocketing high health insurance cost increases by making an immediate rate moratorium, obviously would be effective January 1st, and establishing a fair health insurance premium standard to prevent outrageous increases in the future. It does 4 things, this legislation. Number 1, a 90-day moratorium on any premium hikes in California for all individual, this is just for individual health care plans, HMOs, PPOs, and others.
Assembly Member, can we clarify the amendments you have taken?
Yes. The mock-up has, looks like you're striking out in a couple places in the bill language in subdivision A to have the subdivision end as calculated by the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. Is that your intent? No. What are you right, but you're deleting after that, though. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The confusion is you're highlighting the deletions and the additions in orange, so it's hard to figure out.
I was trying to show you what the changes were because this was a gut amendment.
Okay, so you're adding the word individual and you're striking the rest of the paragraph.
Or underlining, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
We're clear?
We're fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Need to go to two-tone highlighter pens in the future. Okay, so 90-day rate moratorium, just to give a cooling off period for the transition into this new system. Number 2, limits rate increases to match the cost of medical inflation as determined by the medical portion of the consumer price index set by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So if the rate increase is at or below that level, it goes ahead, and the insurer can raise that rate. Once the moratorium is lifted, health insurers can increase rates above that level with an application to the Department of Insurance or the Department of Managed Healthcare. So they can raise the rates, but they have to go through the application process. And finally, insurers will not be able to increase rates more than once in a 12-month period. This is why the legislation is so necessary. We saw with Anthem Blue Cross and with Aetna recently that an analysis, an overview that was conducted by the Department of Insurance produced several errors that led both Aetna and Blue Cross to withdraw their application for a rate increase. And so this way, we know that any increase that is above that medical inflation cost will go automatically to get that review and will require that kind of approval going forward. If they want to get their rate increase approved automatically, they just make it at medical cost or below. And I will quote from Anthem Blue Cross's president in a congressional hearing last year or earlier this year. I quote, "Rate increases reflect the increasing underlying medical costs in the delivery system which are unsustainable." We are acknowledging that medical costs should be covered, and so we're giving them up to that medical cost inflation through this legislation. By initiating the moratorium and setting a baseline that is based on medical costs, Californians will have reasonable assurance that healthcare rate increases will remain in step with the costs that trigger those rate increases. So with that, I ask for your I vote. Here to testify, I have Beth Capel from Health Access.
Beth Capel on behalf of Health Access California, here in support of this measure, which addresses a piece that has not been addressed in other legislation, which is to impose a moratorium on rate increases during the first quarter of next year as we are transitioning to this new system, and also to set a standard for by which will trigger a review of rate increases. We think this is an important measure. Blue Cross has just today, again, Anthem Blue Cross submitted a new rate proposal. We'll see if they can get the arithmetic right this time or if they're going to count aging twice again. We appreciate Commissioner Poizner's promise to post all rate increase requests on his website with the accompanying justification so that we can have a look at that. And as we move forward, we hope that we will be able to figure out a way to do this that makes sense. Thank you.
Kelly Green with the California Nurses Association, and for the reasons stated, we support.
Witnesses in opposition?
The loyal opposition. Yeah, they're not.
What order was this in?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members. Charles Bakke with the California Association of Health Plans in opposition to AB 591. The author's amendments taken today actually make this bill much worse by capping premiums at the medical inflation rate. It's really important to note that the Medical Consumer Price Index is not a fair measure of premium growth by any sense of the imagination. In fact, it's only one factor used in developing premium rates in our current marketplace. For example, we have to look at actual claims data in coming up with our premiums. We look at unit cost trends, which include, as one factor, medical inflation, but it also includes our provider contracts with physicians and hospitals that increase sometimes on a yearly basis. We also have to look at what services people are using and how those services are changing, changes in copays, deductibles, changes in demographics, as well as changes in product designs. I just listed off 8 to 10 factors that go into creating our premium rates, of which medical inflation was one. So our argument against this bill and other simplistic attempts to cap prices at the medical inflation rate, we just think doesn't work. In fact, Milliman issued a report in February of 2010 looking at a historical 10-year span, and that report looked at the medical consumer price index and said, oh, it averages about 4%. But when you consider all of those other factors that go into the underlying premium costs, it actually bounced anywhere from 9 to 12 to 13% in actual cost increases. So this bill would far undervalue the marketplace and would send our companies into terrible, terrible trouble. And just for clarification point, as the amended version of the bill, I don't see any review process because they deleted that part of the bill. It looks like it's only a hard cap, so I don't know if that was an intentional mistake or if I'm misreading it.
Take a moment here. Senator Cedillo has a comment or question.
So people might be under the impression that the medical inflation index, or whatever you call it, would include these other factors that you talked about. If it doesn't, then what are the factors that are included in setting that up?
Thank you, Senator. It's an excellent question. The Medical Consumer Price Index is actually based on a market basket of goods and services. So they take a number of different types of good services that you would have, and then they look at the yearly growth in those services as a per unit cost. It doesn't look at whether or not more people are using those services or less people are using those services. It doesn't look at a number of the other things that I mentioned as well. So it's a very simplistic snapshot. It's just like all the consumer price indexes.
But isn't that snapshot then based on all the other activities surrounding it? Isn't it based on claims, on inflation, on unit trends, on these provider contracts?
No, it's not.
Let me ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
So is it when you take the snapshot, which the Consumer Price Index does, it's just that it's at the moment of what is taking place, the economic activity in this industry at that moment, which then would be all these other elements. I'm not suggesting that you don't reevaluate them for changing your costs or your price, but isn't that what is happening when they make that determination?
In kind of repeating my earlier answer, no, it's not, because the Medical Consumer Price Index is based on this market basket approach of goods. It doesn't look at utilization trends and the fact that more people may be using different services. For example, in an area, you could have the price of an MRI in this market basket might only go up by a few percentage points in a year. That would be reflected in the medical CPI. If for some reason in that geographic region there was a lot more MRIs, or there was expected to be a lot more MRIs, that wouldn't be reflected in the medical cost index. And so we just don't think it's one way to measure growth in medical costs, and it's a component we use, but it's just one factor of many. So we think it's a little limiting.
And the second question is, what would be the impact of this moratorium, this effort to try to hold things in status quo so that all this could be shake out?
Well, the state of Massachusetts
when the entire industry would be impacted, so nobody gets to jump in front of anybody. Everybody's is going to be holding for this 90-day period.
Oh, as the 90-day period moratorium, I mean, it would all depend on when exactly this bill took effect and when it is in the annual process for renewals and pricing of products. So it's a little hard to guess. The idea of freezing rates in general is one that would cause plans to lose millions and millions of dollars if indeed their medical cost trends are rising quickly. It just would all depend on the timing of this bill.
Okay. Thank you.
Next witness.
Jason Gapar with the Association of California Life and Health Insurance Companies. We believe that the bill will put an arbitrary moratorium on rate increases for 90 days without any actuarial justification. Additionally, the new federal health care reform bill changed the entire landscape of what health insurance products must look like. So this will require most benefit packages to be resubmitted with the regulators. This fact, in conjunction with the bill's provision that gives the Department of Insurance 6 months to approve or disapprove an application, we feel that this could significantly delay the approval of those federal policy forms. Commissioner Poizner, as was recently announced, that any rate change filings by health insurers will undergo an additional level of actuarial analysis by outside actuaries when insurers file new rates. And he's also announced that the CDI will make available for public inspection all contents of rate filings for individual policy forms submitted to the CDI, and also allow interested parties to submit comments that will be reviewed by the department lawyers and actuaries.
Teresa Stark with the California Medical Association in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, Manolo Platine, Blue Shield of California, in opposition.
Thank you. Other comments from committee?
Could he restate his name and
organization?
Organization. Sorry, we didn't hear.
Thank you, Senator. Manolo Platine with Blue Shield of California.
Blue Shield, yes.
Madam Chair?
Senator Leno?
Could CMA please come back and give us your take, your oppositional take, please?
CMA, please.
Thank you, Senator Leno. While the California Medical Association certainly wasn't thrilled with the large rate increases that we've seen recently, our concern with the rate regulation bills, we are also opposed to Assemblyman Jones' bill. Our concern is the impact that it will have sort of downstream on the physicians, on the reimbursement rates from health plans, which are already unconscionably low. You heard me present on a bill earlier today with respect to their under reimbursement for vaccines. We think it's going to put the squeeze on physicians. They're going to have to make it up somehow. So we're concerned about the impact on physicians and ultimately then the impact on their time with the patients and the quality of care. So we've continued to suggest that the medical loss ratio, which now of course is in effect at the federal level, but the medical loss ratio with the 85-15 ratio is a better way to manage costs and allow some flexibility within those criteria of what's administrative and what's patient care. So.
Thank you.
Very good. That's helpful. Thank you.
Were there any other comments? Is there a motion on the bill? The bill has been moved by Senator Pavley. Assemblyman, would you like to simply close
I'd like to
address
address
the issues?
some of those things that were said. Number one, in terms of the costs, I quoted to you from the CEO of Anthem Blue Cross, or the president of Anthem Blue Cross. Rate increases reflect the increasing underlying medical costs in the delivery system, which are unsustainable. I didn't make that up. That was her comment in testimony before Congress. She pointed the finger at medical cost inflation. I'm taking her and them at their word. Now they're coming before us and telling us that there's more to it than that. Well, there's an out for that. If you look in the legislation, it says, unless the plan or insurer files an application with the Department of Managed Healthcare or the Department of Insurance, respectively, and the application is approved by that department. That gives the review authority on every single one of these approvals, on every single one of these rate increases. If the rate increase is at medical inflation or below, it's automatic. They can do it. I'm conceding that. If it's at that level or above, it goes to an automatic review, which, as we have seen with Aetna and Blue Cross, yielded them backing off on their rate increases. That is what this bill does in a very simplistic way. I agree. It is very simple. It is so simple that the man on the street can understand. How does this work? It works very straightforward, in a very straightforward way. It protects the consumer, and I think it's very necessary in the atmosphere that we have currently on health insurance. I ask for your aye vote.
The bill has been moved. There has been the close. We're ready for the vote, please.
Senator Alquist?
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Strickland?
No.
Strickland, no. Honested? No. Honested, no. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Cox? Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Negretti McLeod? Pavley? Pavley, aye. Romero?
That bill has 4 votes. It needs 1 more. All the bills are being put on call. Thank you very much. And your next item is file item 17, AB 2110.
Thank you. Madam Chair and Senators, AB 2110 ensures that individual health care plans regulated by CDI and DMHC provide a reasonable grace period before a policy can be canceled for non-payment. Specifically, the bill extends the minimum grace period to 50 days. This is equivalent to what Kaiser currently uses. Current law only requires a 10-day grace period for monthly policies and a 31-day grace period for all other policies. These grace periods are inadequate to reflect tough economic times. Once canceled, consumers have to re-enroll in their health plans, putting them at risk of having to purchase the same policy at a higher rate or being denied coverage altogether. Late last year, Blue Shield reduced their grace period for non-payment from 43 days to 28 days. This change comes as jobless rates are soaring. We know all the economic facts. AB 2110, again, focuses the grace period on what Kaiser currently does on all of its policies. The goal is to keep consumers covered, and this is very important. If a policy is canceled for non-payment after 50 days, AB 2110 holds consumers responsible for incurred medical costs. So there is no backlash on the insurance company. If the person doesn't pay, then they're responsible for anything during that time period during which non-payment occurred. Here to speak in support is Beth Capel, representing Health Access again, and
Lydia Dillon for AARP, who are in support of this bill.
Thank you.
Beth Capel on behalf of Health Access. We're pleased to be the sponsors of this bill. Grace period seems a reasonable thing. Health insurance costs are a major burden for consumers. The bill does say that if as Mr. Delatorre said, that if the payment is late, that the consumer is liable for the cost. There's notice provided to the consumer unless the insurer has authorized the treatment. If the insurer authorizes the treatment, then they've agreed to do that, and they should pay for the authorized treatment. So we're very pleased to be in support of this common sense measure. Thank you.
Teresa Stark with the California Medical Association, pleased to be in support.
Witnesses in opposition?
probably not Kaiser.
Madam Chair and members, Maureen Higgins representing America's Health Insurance Plans. We are in opposition to this bill. As you all know, a grace period is for non-payment of premium. So if the premium isn't paid, then somebody has to pay, whether it's the provider or the health plan. When you provide uncompensated care, then the costs for that care, if the premium isn't paid, go to the other enrollees in the risk pool. While we appreciate the amendment that was made to say that if services are provided during the grace period and the premium isn't paid, that the enrollee must front those costs, we respectfully think that this does not work for two reasons. One is if the enrollee cannot make the premium payment, they are very unlikely to be able to make the payment for services. And secondly, as Ms. Capel noted, the current law says that if the health plan authorizes the payment, then they must, the service, then they must make the payment. This puts health plans in a horrible position because they don't want to withhold authorization for services to their enrollees. But yet, if they authorize those services and the person can't pay, then they're stuck with the bill. So the final point is that we must make claims now within either 30 or 45 days, depending on regulator. This grace period extends past the payment when we have to make those claims. Current law is consistent with national standards. The NAIC spent a long time trying to figure out these various concerns, a reasonable grace period against providing services during that period against the requirements in state law for when you have to make a claim. We think that the current periods are reasonable, and for those reasons we oppose the bill.
Jason Gappart with the Association of California Life and Health Insurance Companies. We're opposed for the reasons stated.
Thank you. Opposition? Comments from committee? Is there a motion on the bill?
I do move the bill. I have a question also.
Yes.
Do we know that Kaiser currently has a 50-day grace period?
Yes.
So
they do, and as I cited, one insurer has reduced theirs from 43 days down to 28 days.
Blue Shield.
So you get this yo-yo effect of people moving all over the place, and so I think we should have a standard that everybody knows, regardless of what insurance company they've got. That's what it is, so that you can promote it, you can talk about it. That can be the standard.
I would have more concern for the opposition's voice if it weren't the fact that in this very down economy, they are reaping record profits. So I'm happy to support the bill today.
Thank you.
Senator Romero.
Yeah, I share the concerns of Senator Leno and will be supportive of this measure. From the opposition, if there's any opposition left up here.
They're there.
That's all right. I'll just make it rhetorical. But I mean, 50 days. I do not understand how the world can come to an end by simply going to, especially in this economy. And if the insurance is dropped, Senator Leno and I were having a little sidebar here, then essentially that insured is dropped, and they come back in, they lose whatever benefits they've accrued, et cetera. It's a higher premium. It seems workable. And maybe the answer is, I mean, this is the first policy committee. Hopefully it'll keep going forward. I intend to support it. I do understand the right of a company to go ahead and make its own decisions. And then consumer awareness, we've got to shop around to make sure that we pick the best one for us. But I would certainly urge the opposition to think about this. This is, quite frankly, a very modest measure in these very difficult times.
Thank you.
The bill has been moved. Did you?
Yes, just 2 points. Number one, on the point that was raised, in terms of authorized treatment that was raised by the opposition. That is current law. I'm not changing that. And I quote, "A healthcare service plan that authorizes a specific type of treatment by a provider shall not rescind or modify this authorization after the provider renders the healthcare service in good faith and pursuant to the authorization for any reason." That's current law. I'm not touching that. Secondly, in terms of the current standard, the 10 days, which is the bare minimum today, how many of us have not missed a payment or gotten something in the mail that we lost or we didn't keep track of or whatever? 10 days. 10 days to catch. Never? You are a rare and special human being. But that's what we're talking about here. And the repercussion isn't just, my electric bill, my this, my that. The repercussion is higher premiums and the potential that you don't get re-upped for health insurance. That is a very severe penalty for an innocent mistake. That's why we need this bill.
Call for the vote, please.
Senator Ahlquist?
Aye.
Ahlquist, aye. Strickland?
No.
Strickland, no. Honested? Honested, no. Cedillo? Cox? Leno?
Aye.
Leno, I. Negretti McLeod. Pavley. Pavley, I. Romero. Romero, I. 4.
That bill has 4 votes. It is on call. And next, we have your last measure, item 21, AB 2345.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. I'd like to start off by accepting the committee's suggested amendments on page 6 of the analysis. AB 2345 will require group or individual health care service plans and insurers to provide for preventive health care services with no cost sharing as provided in the recently passed Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, the federal health care reform that was passed by Congress and signed by the President. The recently passed health care reform requires state implementation of these reforms by September 23rd. This is one of the important reforms needed to ensure Californians receive quality preventive care for free. That's what it was provided for in the federal legislation. It's a very simple piece of that reform that is not covered anywhere else. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Beth Capel on behalf of Health Access California. We're in favor of people being able to get pap smears, mammograms, childhood immunizations, and other basic preventive services with no cost sharing. We're in favor of this bill.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
I thought you were coming in support.
Jason Gapper with the Association of California Life and Health Insurance Companies. We actually have an opposed unless amended position. We believe that the new federal law doesn't require coverage for out-of-network services, for preventative services. So we're afraid under this bill that California law may be construed to require those services, coverage for those services. So we've given the author's staff and your consultant amendments that would say that AB 2345 shouldn't be construed to cover the out-of-network preventative services unless the federal law at a future date is deemed to require those services.
Thank you. Comments from committee? The bill has been moved by Senator Leno. A very brief close.
Just, we received those amendments, those concerns that he referenced just yesterday, so we'll look them over and we'll talk to committee staff as we move along into the chair, as we move along, depending on what we see there.
Thank you very much. Call for the vote, please.
Senator Alquist?
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Strickland? No. Strickland, no. Honested? Honested, no. Cedillo? Cox? Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Negretti McLeod? Negretti McLeod, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Romero? Romero, aye.
That bill has 5 votes, which is enough to get up, but we are keeping everything on call. Thank you very much. Members, what we're going to do is we will have Dr. Hernandez with file item 6 and then file item 27. At that point, we will hope that there is some closure on Assemblyman Blumenfield's bill. If there is, we will take it at that point in time. If not, we will reach another conclusion. And then after that, we will go to the 2 vote-only bills. So we are getting there. Welcome.
Welcome and good evening.
File item 6.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening. I'm assuming we're talking about AB 950. Is that correct? Item
Yes.
6? Okay, as you know, this would allow a licensed and certified hospice program to operate a co-located health facility and standalone facility with its hospice licensee. As you know, we spoke earlier with regard to some of your concerns with regard to the approach that would create a new licensing category. Therefore, we're willing to take the amendments and the lead of the chair to adopt placeholder language and to move the vehicle out to the committee so we can discuss it and potentially bring some amendments back and appropriations. As you know, we looked through the various bullet points. There was a concern, my understanding, that we're going to be changing to provide the hospice facilities greater than 15 to 20 beds and are subject to OSHPD overview and seismic standards. And if that's good with you, Madam Chair, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. It is good with me. And as you know, I take a particular interest in this hospice area for many reasons, including mine was the first HMO legislation signed into law, which included hospice in coverage. I'd like to spend just 5 minutes, since we have dramatically changed the bill, and although you and I have reached agreement as to how we will proceed. I would like the members of the committee to also understand what we have done. There will be many, many more hospice facilities over the years. And it's important that we craft language that anticipates the ramifications that will occur with whatever we in the legislature in 2010 do. Creating a new licensing category is no small business. It is serious business. We've not been able to come to agreement on some key issues regarding building standards and seismic safety standards for these facilities. And we sure have worked really hard to try and do that. As such, I'm recommending that we adopt placeholder language and move the vehicle out of our committee today. I'm doing this without prejudice, so that we can use July to hold an informational hearing and flesh out unresolved issues, since we need to balance state regulation with market forces. Based on that hearing, which will occur actually very soon, July is not that far off, or is it July? It's not July yet. It's tomorrow. Tomorrow's July. So we're not holding the hearing tomorrow. But based on the hearing, we would develop substantive language
5 hours and 17 minutes
to amend back into the bill while it remains in Senate approach. So I mean, you will see exactly what is in the bill at that point. And at that point, we will determine if we need to bring the bill back to this committee, the policy committee. And here is my proposed placeholder language that the author has agreed to. We keep the definition of hospice facility. We strike out Section 6, and instead of directing DPH to develop by June 30th, 2015 regulations to provide for licensure of hospice facilities, including that hospice facilities must meet staffing standards applicable to congregate living health facilities. What we're finding, in this healthcare area, there are so many different levels of facilities, and I'm at some point level trying to bring some consistency statewide, so it is not so confusing for people to understand what facility has what kind of, whether they've met a certain kind of standard. To provide that hospice facilities with greater than 19 beds or multi-story are subject to OSHPD review and seismic safety standards. To keep the section establishing the level of licensing fees for hospice facilities, keep an amended list of services that hospice providers must provide, grandfather in the existing hospice facilities, and there are 18 of them. Keep Section 7 defining services hospice facilities must provide, and keep Section 8 on data reporting. Now, that sounds like quite a list, but I think, as we probably already spent 60, 70 hours on this bill, I have no doubt that, particularly after the hearing we will hold, and the author's solid intent, that we will be able to reach agreement. So that is the basis from which we will be proceeding today, or at least I will be proceeding from today.
Move as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Peter Kellis on behalf of the California Hospice and Palliative Care Association. Appreciate all the hard work and time that's gone into this. Look forward to continue to building on what's been agreed upon, and we'll continue to work in good faith toward closure to create hospice as a place in California rather than the program that goes to places. There are 2 witnesses who have traveled from out of town. We respect the late night or the late hour, and we will be brief.
Senator Alquist and members of the Senate Health Committee, my name's Sally Adelis, and I'm the President and CEO of Hospice of the Valley in San Jose. And I'm here in support of AB 950 on behalf of our program, and very importantly on behalf of the patients and families that we serve in our program. When most of us are asked where we want to be when we approach the end of life, the reality is 80% of us say at home, surrounded by our loved ones. The sad reality is that remaining at home for some hospice patients is impossible. Under current law, if a patient cannot remain in their home, either because they're experiencing a pain or symptom crisis, or they're without the support of a caregiver at home, the only option is to access a nursing facility or a hospital. Neither are optimum places for dying patients and their families. neither offers a home-like environment, and neither are regulated in a manner that supports the needs of the terminally ill, nor embrace the hospice philosophy. Every facility in California is licensed to ensure that patients are provided care to survive. AB 950 will provide to California residents what over 30 other states provide to their residents: a hospice licensed facility, a place where patients can comfortably waive their right to curative care and receive palliative care and comfort in their final days. Personal stories like our patient Michael speak to the need of a hospice licensed facility. Michael was 56 years of age when he was diagnosed with lung cancer. He'd worked as an electrician for 20 years in San Jose, and then he lost his job, and he quickly became homeless. Most of his time he lived under a bridge or slept on the floor of an apartment of his friend. Michael had no family and no health insurance. When he came under our care, he was short of breath and experiencing chest pain. It was obvious that he needed a higher level of care that could not be provided in his current circumstances. Our team quickly mobilized to care for Michael, alleviating his pain, making sure that he was safe, and supporting him both emotionally and spiritually at this time. We helped him apply for Medi-Cal, but our biggest hurdle was trying to find a nursing home that would be willing to accept him. Many, many declined. When we finally found a nursing home willing to accept him, it resembled nothing like home, and their focus was on rehabilitation versus caring for a dying patient whose needs were very different. Michael just wanted to sleep and be comfortable. He had no appetite and had difficulty coping with the requests to eat or to get out of bed in the nursing facility. Plus, the hustle and bustle of a nursing home was very, very overwhelming to him. Michael was close to the end of his life, and the nursing home often offered a very stark contrast to the hospice model of care. In reality, Michael needed and deserved a hospice-type facility.
Ms. Adelis, as much as I respect and admire you, you're a little bit over the time.
Okay, thank you, Senator Alquist. Can I just close with a few statements?
Yes.
AB 950 serves to create a hospice-run facility that offers a special place for those at the end of life. Other choices in our state are to care for those that seek to get better. AB 950 will provide a well-thought and regulated place for those who simply seek comfort at the end of their lives. For many, it will be their final home. Please support AB 950.
And thank you for all your fine work.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Holly Swiger, and I'm the Vice President of Vitas Hospice Services. And I'm here to just mention that although California provided more hospice care than just second to New York in all of the country, we're 12th from last in the provision of inpatient care, and it's because we don't have a license. I've been, when I first built San Diego Hospice 20 years ago, my only choices were something that were not adequate, and it continues to be so. The important thing to remember here is I do believe we've come to agreement on a safe and effective environment for hospice with staffing ratios that are supportive, and that we need to move forward as quickly as possible because it is a mandatory level of care that we have to provide. And if we don't have a place to provide it, then hospice itself is in jeopardy. Hospice saves the state nearly $24 million every single year through its Medicaid program. We really want to promote this not only for the state budget, but for our patients and families that need it most. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition?
Yeah. On behalf of the California Nurses Association, firstly, we want to thank the chair and her staff, the sponsors, and the author for all of the work that's gone into this bill. We certainly understand the intent, and we believe that hospice care is an integral part of the continuum of care. We'd love to see increased access to it. However, as you and the committee members are aware, when you are going into the territory of creating a new licensing category, we need to make sure that strong, high standards are in place for the protection of patients. As such, as the bill is currently drafted, we had concerns with staffing, we had concerns with the lack of regulation, with the requirement for regulations, as well as building standards. We appreciate the amendments that have been negotiated today. We look forward to seeing the language, and we look forward to being a part of the discussion as this bill progresses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth Capel, on behalf of the Service Employees International Union, we would share the comments of the California Nurses Association, and we do very much appreciate the efforts of the committee chair and the author and the sponsors. It's important that hospice care be safe care. The patients that we're talking about would have been hospital patients in 1973. So as we look at the seismic standards and the staffing standards, we're mindful of that, and we will look forward to the hearing. Thank you.
Yes, I hope that you will participate in the hearing. I think you will see that many of your concerns are already starting to be addressed.
We appreciate the willingness, your efforts, and the willingness of the sponsors and the author to address them as
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Senator Leno.
Thank you. The tone of the opposition sounds very conciliatory, but can you tell us where you are on the proposed amendments that the chair has put forward?
Yes, I can tell you just from the brief description that we received that we would likely still have concerns with the deadline for regulations being in 2015. We'd like to see regulations be worked on immediately if we have a new licensing category for these facilities. Additionally, a proposal
so you're hoping that they can be done sooner than that?
We think yes, we think the requirement should be.
Sure.
We're not sure why. We don't see the necessity in postponing regulations for
Madam
another.
Chair, might we consider no later than?
Certainly.
Thank you.
And what is? We'll have to see what the author says.
I
also,
apologize.
yes. That would be fine with me.
I'm sorry,
The comment was on developing the regulations. Instead of saying by June 30th, 2015, what I'm understanding from Senator Leno would be to be developed no later than June 30th, 2015.
Yeah, we're fine with that, Madam Chair. Thank you.
It's a little clearer.
It's a fine point,
Yeah.
but the change will be made. Yes, thank you.
With regard to staffing, I don't believe that CLIF standards would satisfy our concerns with regard to staffing. We have concerns about scope of practice and patient safety issues with allowing LVNs to be alone in the facility with up to 6 patients at a time. If the condition in a patient changes, the LVN would be required to assess that change, which they are not allowed to do under scope of practice and do not have the education or training to do that. Additionally, the one...
Just a second on that
Yes.
point. Madam Chair, where are we on staffing in your proposed amendment?
We'll flesh it out during the informational hearing.
So
And there's different categories of where it's
where
the hospice is attached to a certain kind of facility, and I think the hearing will be a good place. I think you've raised some really good comments and concerns that I think will probably be addressed at that point in time.
So, as amended, it's very much a work in progress. There's
Very, very much, and that is why I said that, we are holding the hearing in the next few weeks or in the next month, and that then we will have something to really look at, and that we can always bring it back
Great.
to
And
this
I would
committee.
only encourage both CNA and SEIU to very much participate in that.
Yes.
So we don't have to rehash it all tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there other comments from committee? The bill has been moved by Senator Strickland. Very brief.
Commend the author. Our world's changing and our nation's getting older. And then we're challenged, as we've talked about all afternoon, by chronic health care conditions that hopefully some of the reform will take care of it, some of it won't. But we cannot deny the fact that, some 20, 30 years ago, there were 19 workers to everyone that's retired. Today, there's 3 workers to everyone who's retired. We're moving towards 2 to 1. People are aging. Our nation's getting older. And the need for this care, the emergence of this industry, the importance of it for our society is just critical. And so I applaud the author for bringing this, having the courage and the conviction to bring this forward, and for the witnesses for them being leaders at the forefront of a more civil way of addressing this life-ending process. So happy to move your bill and vote for it.
Thank you. The bill has been moved.
Respectfully ask for a vote, Madam Chair.
Thank you. and it's been a good experience working with you on this. Call for the vote, please.
Senator Alquist?
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Strickland?
Aye.
Strickland, aye. Honested? Honested, no. Cedillo?
Aye.
Cedillo, aye. Cox? Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Negrete McLeod?
Aye.
Negrete McLeod, aye. Pavley?
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye.
7.
Well, we'll
7 to 1.
we'll just say that has 7 votes. It's 7 to 1. It's actually everyone who's going to be here.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Since Senator Cox is not able to be with us today, so that will be out. You have one more bill?
One more bill.
And-
AB 2551. This seeks to establish a scholarship and loan repayment program for pharmacy technicians. As you know, the industry has boomed significantly in their health careers since the mid-'90s. Demand for properly trained and culturally competent pharmacy technicians has grown as a limited number of pharmacists
And
utilize
this is
these
file
individuals
27?
Yes, as the gatekeepers and educators of their pharmacies. Unfortunately, impacted programs in our community colleges have forced many students to seek their education through various private institutions, and these tend to charge higher tuition and fees for providing the coursework. The bill simply lays the foundation for supporting the proper distribution of pharmacy technicians in the state. With the health care reform in its way, this is extremely important, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there witnesses in support? The bill has been moved by Senator Negrete McLeod. Are there witnesses in support? Are there witnesses in opposition? Comments from committee? The bill has been moved. Call for the vote. Oh, a very succinct close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Respectfully, I have your aye vote.
Senator Alquist?
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Strickland?
No.
Strickland, no. Honested? Honested, no. Cedillo?
Aye.
Cedillo, aye. Cox? Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Negrete McLeod?
Aye.
Negrete McLeod, aye. Pavley? Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye. It's got 5.
That bill has 5 votes, which is enough to get out.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Oh, wait a minute. It's still going to be on call. I realize
Okay.
we're one member who is here is not here at the moment, although she's been here quite a bit today.
Yeah, I understand, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Assemblyman Blumenfield.
Yes. Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity to work out. We've worked together. We've come to a solution. Obviously, it's not everything I'd hoped, but the extra time that you gave us a chance to work out a step in a positive direction that I'm pleased with, and I think all parties are pleased with.
Good. I'd like to state what we've all agreed to here.
Yeah,
The
language.
Yes, that would be yes. The agreed amendment would allow provisions in contracts between employers and plans and insurers that allow mid-contract changes, but require separate enhanced disclosure at the point of sale that explains to the employer how such a change could occur and provide specific definitions and examples. And this must be signed by the buyer.
Correct.
So it has more of the consumer protection that I was looking for. Staff will work with the author and stakeholders on the language to reflect this. And given that you and I, Mr. Blumenfield, have this agreement, I would suggest a do pass as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there a motion? Well, everybody has moved the bill.
Will we vote for it?
That's a different matter. Yes, that's a different matter. Would the opposition like to speak for 1 minute? Pardon me?
He said they removed.
Is it removed? But if you want to.
Yeah. No, thank you, Madam Chair. Just since we're on the topic of disclosure, obviously with the California Association of Health Plans, we have 40 health plan members. So conceptually, this is definitely a step in the right direction on the bill. We will run it by our membership. It depends on the language, the specific wording of the language as well. But yeah, I mean, this is something that preserves our ability to make adjustments when changes are made that are outside of our control.
Thank you.
For Kaiser Permanente, I think it's a reasonable solution. It allows employers to know exactly what they're getting into, and that is what a contract is, a meeting of the minds. So we're fine with the resolution.
As we understand it, the enhanced disclosure is beneficial. As we understand it, we'll be okay with it, and we would remove our opposition.
Thank you very much. There have been multiple motions. So I call for the vote.
Senator Alquist?
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Strickland? Honested? No. Honested, no. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Cox? Leno? Aye. Leno, aye. Negretti McLeod? Negretti McLeod, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Romero? Romero, aye.
Strickland, no.
Strickland, no.
Everybody's here, right? That bill has 6 votes. It was 6 to 2. It is out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your indulgence, all the members. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we have 2 bills left that are for vote only. It's just going to be the vote. The first one is file item 31, AB 1858 by Mr. Blumenfield. The bill has been moved by Senator Negrete McLeod.
Senator Alquist?
No.
Alquist, no. Strickland?
No.
Strickland, no. Honested? Honested, no. Cedillo? Cox? Leno? Cedillo, aye. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Negretti McLeod? Negretti McLeod, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Romero? I beg your pardon? Aye. Romero, aye. 5-3.
The vote is 5-3. That bill is out. The next item is file item 32, AB 2000 by Assemblyman Hagman. It's been moved by Senator Negrete McLeod.
Senator Alquist?
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Strickland?
Aye.
Strickland, aye. Honested? No. Honested, no. Cedillo?
I'm sorry, aye.
Honested, no to aye. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Cox? Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Negretti McLeod? Negretti McLeod, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye. Scott, 8. 8, it's out.
And did there be no votes? The bill received 8 votes. It is out. Now, members, we will go through the bills one more time. First, let's do the consent calendar. File item 18, AB 2248, Assemblymember Hernandez. Item 23, AB 2432 by Assemblymember Perez. Item 25, AB 2533 by Assemblymember Fuentes. Item 26, AB 2541 by Assemblymember Portantino. Item 29, AB 2786 by the Assembly Health Committee.
The current vote is 6-0.
The current vote is 6-0. If you could go through the roll, please.
Senator Alquist?
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Cox? Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye. Scott, 8.
That bill, the consent calendar has 8 votes. It is out. Now we will go through the other bills. if you would like to begin.
Item 1, AB 342 by Speaker Perez. Senator Alquist.
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Cox. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye. That's 7 to 1.
Did I defer?
Yes, you did.
The vote is 7 to 1. That bill is out.
Item 2, AB 278 by Assemblymember Monning. Senator Onnested. Onnested, no. Cedillo. Aye. Cedillo, aye. Pavley. Aye. Pavley, aye. 6 to 2.
The vote is 6 to 2. That bill is out.
Item 3, AB 542 by Assemblymember Fuhr. Senator Cox. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye. 6 to 2.
6 to 2. That bill is out.
Item 4, AB 591 by Assemblymember De La Torre. Senator Cox. Negrete McLeod. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye. 5 to 2.
5 to 2. That bill is out.
Item 5 was pulled from the agenda.
Yes, item 5 was pulled.
Item 6 is out. Item 7, AB 1542 by Assemblymember Jones. Senator Alquist.
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Cox. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye. 6 to 2.
6 to 2. That bill is out.
Item 8, AB 1602 by Speaker Perez. Senator Alquist.
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Cox. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye.
6 to 2. That bill is out.
Item 9, AB 1640 by Assemblymember Evans. Senator Cox. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye.
8 to 0. That bill is out.
Item 10, AB 1652 by Assemblymember Jones. Senator Alquist.
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Cox. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye. 6 to 2.
6 to 2. That bill is out.
AB 1653 by Assemblymember Jones. Senator Cox. Romero. Romero, aye.
6 to 2. That bill is out.
Item 12, AB 1759 by Assemblymember Blumenfield is out. Item 13, Assembly Bill 1826 by Assemblymember Huffman. Senator Onnested. No. Onnested, no. Cedillo. Aye. Cedillo, aye. Cox. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Negrete McLeod. Pavley.
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye.
5 to 2. That bill is out.
Item 14, AB 1931 by Assemblymember Tirico. Senator Alquist.
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Cox. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye. It's got 8 ayes.
8 ayes. That bill is out.
Item 15, AB 1963 by Assemblymember Nava. Senator Cedillo. Aye. Cedillo, aye. Cox. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye.
6 to 2. That bill is out.
Item number 16, AB 2093 by Assemblymember Perez. Senator Alquist.
Aye.
Alquist, aye. Cedillo. Aye. Cedillo, aye. Cox. Negrete McLeod. Negrete McLeod, aye. Pavley. Aye. Pavley, aye. Romero. Aye. Romero, aye.
7 to 1. That bill is out.
Item 17, AB 2110 by Assemblymember De La Torre. Senator Cedillo. Aye. Cedillo, aye. Negrete McLeod.
5 to 2. That bill is out.
Item 18, AB 2248 by Assemblymember Hernandez. That bill is out. Oh, that's a consent item, sorry.
That was consent.
Sorry.
Yes, that was consent.
AB 19, I'm sorry, item 19, AB 2275 by Assemblymember Hayashi. Senator Cox. Negrete McLeod.
I voted aye based on the promise that Assemblymember Hayashi would craft an amendment that met my concerns regarding consumer protection.
Negrete McLeod, aye. Pavley? Aye. Pavley, aye. Romero? Aye. Romero, aye.
8 votes. That bill is out.
Item number 20, AB 2287 by Assemblymember Monning. Senator Onnested? Onnested, no. Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Cox? Pavley? Aye. Pavley, aye. Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye.
7-1, that bill is out.
Item number 21, AB 2345 by Assemblymember De La Torre. Senator Cedillo? Cedillo, aye.
6-2, that bill is out.
Item number 22, AB 2354 by Assemblymember Perez. Senator Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Cox? Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye.
6-2, that bill is out.
Item 23 is consent. Item 24, AB 2456 by Assemblymember Tirico. Senator Cox? Romero?
No.
Romero, no.
5-3, that bill is out.
Item 25 is consent. Item 26 is consent. Item 27, AB 2551 by Assemblymember Hernandez. Senator Cox? Pavley? Aye. Pavley, aye.
6-2, that bill is out.
Item number 28, AB 2720 by Speaker Perez. Senator Onnested? Onnested, no. Cox? Pavley? Pavley, aye.
6-2, that bill is out.
Item number 29 is consent. Item 30, AB 2787 by Assemblymember Manning.
Excuse me, can I ask a question on this?
Oh, which one?
On file item 30. Just one of these questions on terms of the name. Is it still ombudsman? I mean, a lot of entities, when they create these, talk about the ombudsperson. Is it maintained as the man when it might be a woman? That's going to be the basis of my opposition. We're in a, and people have moved forward on dealing with the ombudsperson. I find this to be personally antiquated language. So I'm going to cast a no vote, but I would urge.
Well, I happen to agree with you. And we should, on another day, have a very heavy-duty philosophical discussion.
Maybe the assembly member might consider making a change if it's got the sufficient votes. But I would really urge, because we are moving forward. So
I agree.
Thank you.
No disagreement.
Yes. Thank you very much. That was.
Okay.
Well, I believe we're done.
Well, I have to vote on it.
Oh, you haven't voted yet, right? We were expressing. Okay.
Senator Cedillo?
Aye.
Cedillo, aye. Pavley?
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Romero?
No.
Romero, no.
Let them know we'd like to change before we see it.
5-3, that bill is out. Members, thank you. We were here almost 6 hours. I appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and for the
Thank you, Madam Chair.
good eats.
I was going to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We will be having a bill hearing on Wednesday, August.
Which one?
On Wednesday, August 4th, to hear 4 or 5 urgency bills. We are planning an informational hearing during July. On the. We don't yet, but we should within a week, within 3 or 4 days, actually, on the proposed realignment proposals dealing with the Department of Aging programs and drug and alcohol programs. This is our last regular kind of meeting. I'd like to thank Vice Chair Strickland. And I'd like to thank everyone, all the committee members and consultants on both sides, and certainly our illustrious staff on both sides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.